My husband, who I've been taking care of since his accident, said he wants a divorce. He told me, "You're just not attractive anymore." His friends laughed when he said it. My sister-in-law said I was lucky he stayed this long. 3 years later, I got the last laugh. Michael and I had a good marriage. Or at least, I thought we did. We met in downtown Asheville, outside the Mass General Store. I was juggling an overpriced latte, a tote bag full of art supplies, and my keys when I dropped everything and he picked it up for me. Cliché? Sure. But it worked. Michael was the kind of man who made people feel safe. Broad-shouldered, neatly dressed, with the kind of laugh that made you want to laugh too. He was the guy your mom hopes you bring home, respectful, employed, stable. We dated for about a year and a half before he proposed at the Arboretum. Surrounded by blooming azaleas and confused tourists, he got down on one knee and asked me to be his forever. And I said yes. Our wedding was simple and beautiful, small ceremony in the mountains, our family smiling in the late spring sunlight. I remember looking at him during our vows and thinking, this is it. This is my person. We built a comfortable life. Nothing flashy. I ran a small but growing home business making customized wall art and pottery, and he worked in engineering, commuting out to Hendersonville most days. We had our routines: Thursday takeout, Sunday morning hikes, monthly trivia night at Jack of the Wood downtown. Then one winter morning, everything changed. It was icy that day. Black ice, they said later. Michael had taken my car because his truck was low on gas. I was sipping coffee in my robe when I got the call. A semi had plowed through a red light, hit him square on the driver's side. He was airlifted to Mission Hospital in critical condition. I barely remember the first week. The ICU waiting room, the stale coffee, the smell of antiseptic that clung to my hair and clothes. When the doctors told me he was going to survive but would never walk again, I just nodded. I didn't cry. Not then. I moved into autopilot mode. I canceled client orders. I turned our guest room into a temporary care space. I learned how to lift a 190-pound man out of bed without breaking my back. I learned how to give sponge baths, track medication, change bedpans, and keep a smile on my face when I wanted to scream. Everyone called me strong. "You're incredible," they'd say. "A real angel." But angels don't feel like they're drowning. Michael wasn't the same after the accident. Which is understandable, to a point. His body was broken, his spirit crushed. He went from an independent, outdoorsy guy to being confined to a chair with nerve pain and muscle spasms. But somewhere along the line, his grief turned toxic. He wasn't just angry at the world, he started directing it at me. At first, it was small. He'd sigh when I helped him eat. Roll his eyes when I asked what he wanted to watch on TV. Then came the comments. "You really gonna wear that? You used to at least try to look nice. You've gained weight." I blamed the accident. The depression. The meds. I excused it all. But it got worse. He started inviting his friends over again, the same guys he used to go fishing and drinking with. Only now, they were just there to sit around, drink beers, and act like overgrown teenagers. I'd bring them drinks, chips, try to be polite. Then I heard it. One afternoon, I was coming down the hallway and I heard Michael laughing. "She's really trying, man," he said. "But she's just not attractive anymore." And they laughed. They laughed. I stood there, frozen, like someone had reached inside my chest and yanked something loose. That night, I asked him about it. Quietly. Carefully. "You said that to them?" I asked. He didn't even blink. "It's true, isn't it? You don't take care of yourself. I mean, look at you." I had been taking care of him for over a year at that point. Cleaning his wounds. Feeding him. Canceling my own dental appointments and skipping meals to stretch what little money we had. But none of that mattered to him anymore. After that, things spiraled. His sister Brielle started dropping in unannounced, sitting on the couch like it was her throne. She always had a comment. "You look tired. Still no kids? Guess that ship sailed. You're lucky Michael's still with you, after everything." She said that one night while I was folding laundry. Said it so casually, like it was a fact. "Lucky," she repeated. "Most men would have left already." I just stared at her, clutching one of Michael's old t-shirts, and thought, she really believes that. They all do. They believed I was disposable. That I should be grateful. 2 years after the accident, on what would have been our 6th wedding anniversary, he asked for a divorce. No lead-up. No discussion. Just flat out said he wanted out. "I've been thinking about it for a while," he said. "You're not what I want anymore." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I think the last of me had already been chipped away, one insult at a time. I packed a bag, took my car, and left that night. No dramatic exit. Just the quiet sound of a door clicking shut. And I didn't go back. I didn't have a plan that night. Just a suitcase, a phone charger, and the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones. I drove aimlessly through Asheville, past the quiet streets and shuttered storefronts, until I pulled into a roadside motel just outside of Swannanoa. The kind with buzzing fluorescent lights and paper-thin walls. I sat in the car for almost an hour, staring at the dashboard, heart hammering like I'd just committed a crime. It wasn't guilt, though, it was the shock of choosing myself for the first time in years. I booked a room. The guy at the counter didn't ask questions. I collapsed onto the bed and stared at the ceiling all night. No tears. No calls. Just silence. And in that silence, I felt something crack open, not a breakdown, but a break free. The next morning, I called an attorney. Her name was Monica. Sharp as a blade, kind eyes. She was the kind of woman you meet once and wish you'd known all your life. I told her everything. Not in a dramatic sobbing way, just the facts. The caregiving. The insults. The sacrifices. She looked at me through the screen of our Zoom call and said, "We're going to make this right." And she did. The divorce took 9 months. 9 long, bitter, grueling months. Michael tried to drag me through the mud. He wanted the house, my savings, even some of my grandmother's jewelry. Said he deserved compensation. Said I abandoned him. That I was unfit. That I wasn't contributing. But Monica came prepared. I had kept a journal. Not out of spite, but to stay sane. I'd written everything, every task I did, every cruel word, every ignored doctor's appointment, every time I begged him to take his medication. I had receipts, messages, voice memos, photos. And most importantly, I had witnesses. Friends I'd drifted from who had seen what I was going through. A neighbor who had helped me lift him into the shower once when he fell and I almost slipped a disc trying. My former therapist, who knew everything. When Michael's lawyer tried to paint me as negligent, Monica calmly flipped through a binder the size of a phone book and said, "Let's talk about caregiving labor." The judge sided with me. Not out of pity, out of evidence. I got the house. I kept my car, my savings, and most importantly, my peace. Michael didn't get a cent from me. And let me tell you, the look on his face when the judge read the final decision? It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like relief. But here's the thing no one tells you, starting over at nearly 40 is terrifying. I wasn't some 20-something with dreams of becoming a yoga influencer. I had bills, responsibilities, a body that ached in new places, and a heart that was still shell-shocked from the last 3 years. I hadn't felt like a woman in ages, just a caretaker with fading photos on the wall and trauma packed between her ribs. But I had a house. My house. The same one Michael said I didn't deserve. The same porch where I'd spent so many nights alone. It needed work, the paint was chipped, the plumbing was iffy, and the garden looked like a battlefield, but it was mine. I picked up the pieces slowly. I restarted my online shop. Not just pottery this time, I leaned into therapeutic crafts. Hand-molded pieces designed to soothe the mind. I sold on Etsy, then branched into local markets. I renamed the shop to Still Clay, because I was still here. Still creating. Still me. I cut off contact with everyone who made me feel small. That included Brielle, who tried to call once after the ruling, something about reconsidering and family bonds. I blocked her mid-sentence. I went back to therapy. Started walking daily. At first just around the block, then the greenways, then finally, I hiked the same trail Michael and I used to take before the accident. Craggy Gardens, off the Blue Ridge Parkway. The air was thinner than I remembered, but I made it to the overlook, alone, and stood there watching the valley below in silence. I wasn't healed yet. But I wasn't broken anymore either. A year after the divorce, I signed up for a weekend ceramics retreat in Boone. Just for fun. Just to feel like a human again. That's where I met Paolo. He wasn't the reason I got better, I want to be clear on that. My healing didn't hinge on a man coming in to save me. But meeting him was like finding an echo in a canyon. Unexpected, quiet, and oddly familiar. He was there helping his sister, who ran the retreat. A trauma nurse from Asheville, kind eyes, warm voice, hands that looked like they'd held pain and stitched people back together. We talked over dinner. Just small talk. Nothing flirty. Nothing forced. But he listened. And when I talked, he didn't look past me. He looked at me. We kept in touch, slowly. Messages turned to calls. Calls turned to hikes. Hikes turned into dinners, movie nights, weekend getaways. It wasn't a whirlwind. It was a slow burn. The good kind. The kind you know won't just fizzle out after the credits roll. By year 2, we were living together in Black Mountain, in a little A-frame house tucked into the trees. I kept making art. He kept saving lives. We adopted a rescue dog named Blue. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Quiet. Safe. I had never known peace like that. Sometimes I'd still get flashbacks. Little jabs of memory, Michael's voice, Brielle's sneer, the crushing weight of years spent unseen. But they came less and less. And when they did, I let them pass through me. Like wind through leaves. And then, almost 3 years to the day since the divorce, I ran into Brielle at a local arts festival in Asheville. I was working my booth. Sunlight streaming down, a breeze lifting the edge of my tablecloth. My shop had grown, my shelves were nearly empty from sales, and a woman had just asked if I did commissions. That's when I saw her. Brielle. Same tight ponytail. Same purse clutched to her ribs like a life vest. She was older, and I don't just mean in age, I mean worn. She didn't recognize me at first. I had let my hair grow out naturally, stopped wearing baggy clothes, started choosing colors again. When she did recognize me, her face changed. Surprise, then discomfort. She walked over like she wasn't sure whether to compliment me or slap me. "Well," she said, squinting. "You look different." I smiled. "Yeah. Life's been good." She shifted awkwardly. "Michael's not doing great. He's been having a rough time." I just nodded. "I'm sorry to hear that." And I meant it. Not because I missed him. But because I knew that he had created that misery, shaped it with his own hands. She hesitated like she wanted to say more. Maybe she wanted me to say something kind. Or ask about him. Or offer some closure. But I didn't. I didn't owe her that. Or him. I turned to help another customer, and as I wrapped their mug, I heard Brielle walk away. Not a word more. "Let me know when you're ready to hear how it really ends, because the last laugh?" Oh, it echoed. The encounter with Brielle stayed with me longer than I expected. Not in a painful way, but in that strange, unsettled way when your past bumps into your present and you realize how far apart they've grown. She looked at me like she was still trying to match me with the woman I used to be, hunched, tired, muted. But that version of me no longer existed. What she didn't know, what no one from that world knew, was how far I had come. And not just the outside stuff. Sure, I looked different. Happier. Healthier. I smiled without second-guessing if my teeth were crooked. I wore dresses again. I let people take my photo. I looked in mirrors. All of that mattered. But the bigger shift was inside. I had rebuilt my identity from ashes. It wasn't overnight. Healing was awkward and messy and nonlinear. Some days, I still flinched at loud voices. Still woke up gasping from dreams where I was stuck in that house, being told I wasn't enough. But I had learned how to breathe through it. How to remind myself I was safe. Paolo helped, sure, but he didn't carry me. He didn't fix me. What he did was different. He never tried to make me forget. He just made it okay to remember without crumbling. He was the kind of man who didn't flinch when I needed space. Who asked before touching. Who said things like, "You don't owe me your story, but if you want to share it, I'll listen." He was there the first time I laughed so hard I cried after years of only crying because I couldn't laugh. He came to my shows. He packed my car for festivals. He kept granola bars in his glove compartment for me. That's the kind of man he was. One night, after a spring market in Waynesville, we were packing up under fading golden light, and he said, "You don't talk about him much. Your ex." I paused, wrapping a ceramic bowl in tissue paper. "I don't need to," I said. He already took enough of my time. Paolo didn't push. He just nodded, loaded the last box, and held out his hand. That night, as we drove through the mountains with the windows cracked and music low, I realized I wasn't afraid of being loved anymore. I wasn't afraid of being seen. The funny thing about people who break you is that they expect you to stay broken. They think they're the last chapter in your story. But they're not. They're the comma before the plot twist. The one that makes you turn the page. Around this time, my shop really started to grow. I'd been posting more behind-the-scenes videos, little clips of me shaping clay with calming music, or time-lapse of me glazing intricate leaf patterns on mugs. The algorithm liked them. Views started climbing. Orders doubled. Then one video went viral, a reel of me crafting a mug that said, "Healing is louder than hurt." It wasn't dramatic. Just my hands, a slow song, and the words slowly forming in clay. I didn't even have my face in it. But something about it resonated. The comments flooded in. This made me cry in the best way. Just left a relationship like this. Thank you. I didn't know how much I needed this today. I was stunned. People, strangers from across the country, were finding comfort in the same things that once helped me find my footing. My pain had turned into something useful. Something soft. Something that could hold tea and memories and healing in equal measure. I started offering small virtual workshops. They sold out fast. Women wrote me letters. One said, "I left after 22 years. Your art made me feel brave." Another said, "I thought I was alone." I wasn't. None of us were. We'd just been made to believe we were. At home, Paolo and I were building our own life, one not defined by crisis or obligation. We planted a garden out back. Tomatoes. Lavender. Blueberries. I found joy in the dirt under my nails. In the way Blue, our mutt with 2 long legs and a heart bigger than his bark, followed me from room to room like a loyal shadow. I'd catch myself humming again. Dancing while I cooked. Singing old songs in the shower. There was a day I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, wearing a deep green wrap dress I'd bought on a whim, and I said out loud, "You're beautiful." No one was around. It wasn't for anyone else's ears. But it was the first time I'd believed it. Later that summer, I got an email from a gallery in Asheville. They'd seen my work at a market and wanted to feature a few pieces in a local artist showcase. It wasn't a big gallery. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. A space I'd carved out with the same hands that used to shake while chopping vegetables after a day of silent judgment. I told Paolo that night. He beamed. "I hope they give you your own wall," he said, grinning. "They said they might," I replied, laughing. "Just a corner, but still." "You deserve more than a corner," he said. "You deserve the whole damn gallery." There was something so sincere in the way he said it, I had to look away for a second just to catch my breath. But even with all this joy, I wasn't immune to reminders. I'd run into old acquaintances here and there, people who'd known Michael, or been part of our old social circle. They'd always lead with a sort of awkward hesitation, trying to mask their curiosity. Some would say, "You look great," with a tone that carried too much surprise. Others, braver or blunter, would ask, "So, what happened between you two?" I always gave the same answer. I stopped being invisible. It shut them up every time. And slowly, the sting of their reactions wore off. I stopped needing their understanding. I stopped craving the validation I once bent over backwards to earn. Some people will always choose the version of you that serves their story. Let them. What mattered was that I no longer chose that version. One evening, I sat on the back porch watching fireflies rise over the garden. Blue lay curled at my feet, snoring softly. Paolo was inside on the phone with his sister, laughing about something I couldn't hear. I held a warm mug, one I'd made myself, and sipped slowly. And I thought about everything it had taken to get here. The nights spent crying on the bathroom floor. The bags under my eyes from sleeping on a couch because the man I loved couldn't stomach the sight of me anymore. The quiet betrayals. The loud ones. The way I'd shrunk myself to make others more comfortable. And how I'd finally stopped. Because in that stillness, in the hum of crickets and the warmth of clay in my hands, I realized something powerful. I had become the woman I needed back then. And that woman? She was just getting started. A few months after the gallery showcase, I got a message that stopped me cold. It was from Michael's old friend, Jonah. I hadn't heard from him in years. He was part of the group that used to come over, drink on our couch, and laugh at Michael's cruel little quips while I cleaned up after them. I remembered him most for never looking me in the eye. Always smiling at my food, never at me. One of those men who thought their silence made them innocent. The message came through my shop's Instagram, of all places. Just one line. "Didn't expect to see you featured in the Citizen Times. Congrats. You seem happy." I stared at the screen for a minute, unsure whether to block him or ignore it. But then I realized, this wasn't for me to react to. This wasn't an olive branch. It wasn't even regret. It was curiosity. The "I wonder what she's doing now" itch from someone who never thought I'd be more than a background character in Michael's story. So I let the message sit. Unread. No reply. No reaction. Nothing. Let them wonder. The article he referenced was a small write-up about the gallery event. A reporter had come through, taken a liking to my pieces, and asked for a quick interview. I told her about how pottery had saved me, how it had given me a language when I didn't have words. I never once mentioned Michael. Didn't need to. My joy didn't require his context. And yet, somehow, word had spread. A week after that message, Brielle tried again. This time, it was an email. It was longer than I expected. Too long, honestly. She didn't apologize outright, but there were phrases like "looking back, I realize," and "I never meant for things to come across that way," and "family can be complicated." It was all passive voice. All safe phrasing. No, I was wrong. Just vague nods to time and circumstance and hurt people hurting people. At the end, she asked if we could meet for coffee. Not to hash things out, just to catch up. I stared at the screen for a long time. It would have been easy to ignore her. But something in me, not bitterness, but curiosity, wanted to see what she looked like up close. How someone like her moved through the world after losing control of the narrative. So I agreed. 1 coffee. 1 hour. Neutral ground. We met at Green Sage downtown. It was a bright day, and the cafe was busy. I got there early and chose a table by the window. She arrived 10 minutes late, wearing sunglasses and an expensive-looking coat, like armor. She ordered a matcha latte and sat across from me like we were old sorority sisters catching up after years apart. She looked at me for a long time before speaking. "You really do look different." I just smiled. She talked a lot, about work, about aging parents, about Michael. Said he wasn't doing well. His health had declined. His attitude, too. She said it like it was news, like he hadn't been like that since the accident. "He's angry," she said, stirring her drink. "More than usual." I said nothing. Just watched her. She kept going, rambling almost. "I think he thought you'd come back," she said eventually. "After everything. That you'd forgive him. You always used to forgive him." That part made me pause. Not because it hurt, but because it was true. I had. Over and over and over. I had forgiven him for things he never even acknowledged. Things no one else even knew about. I had swallowed apologies I never received like they were vitamins, bitter but necessary. But I didn't anymore. I looked at her, leveled my gaze, and said, "He lost the best version of me." Her face flickered, maybe surprise, maybe something deeper. "I'm not angry," I added. "But I'm not sorry either." She nodded slowly. "He doesn't laugh anymore." I sipped my coffee. "He used to laugh at me." She didn't argue. The rest of the conversation was filler. Polite questions. Comments about the weather, traffic, the rising cost of living. She didn't ask to stay in touch, and I didn't offer. We hugged, barely, and she left. I stayed behind for another cup. I thought about how strange it was. The woman who once told me I was lucky to have a man like Michael was now trying to connect because she realized what he'd lost. The irony of it all didn't feel like revenge. It felt like closure. But the real turning point came a few weeks later. It was mid-October, right when the leaves start to crisp and fall like confetti. I was doing a solo hike on the Mountains to Sea Trail, a route Paolo and I did often. He was working a double shift that day, so I'd taken Blue and gone up ahead for some quiet time. About halfway through the trail, I passed a couple sitting on a bench, older, maybe in their late 60s. The woman was reading aloud from a book, and the man was watching a squirrel try to open a snack wrapper someone had dropped. They looked at each other like they still chose each other, every single day. I smiled as I passed them, nodding politely. And then I realized, I didn't ache when I saw couples like that anymore. There was a time when the sight would have gutted me. When I would have thought, why not me? Why didn't I get that kind of love? But not now. Because I finally understood something I hadn't before. The love I had given Michael, the selfless, patient, full-bodied kind, wasn't wasted. It wasn't foolish. It wasn't weak. It was evidence. Evidence that I was capable of deep, sacrificial, stubborn love. The kind that stays when it's hard. The kind that tries. The kind that believes. And now? I was giving that love to someone who earned it. And more importantly, I was giving it to myself. The trail curved around a grove of red maples, and I stopped to take a photo. Blue wandered ahead, ears perked, tail wagging like a metronome. The wind picked up, cool and sweet, and I stood there, bathed in golden light, thinking. This is what peace feels like. It doesn't arrive with a parade. It doesn't announce itself. It just is. It was early November when I got the message that would seal everything in place. I was prepping for a holiday artisan market in Weaverville, boxing up my newest pieces, a winter collection of stoneware mugs etched with affirmations, "You are not what hurt you. Soft is not weak. Still standing." sales had been booming. My shop, still clay, had taken on a life of its own. What once was a side hustle in a tiny spare room had become a full-time career with a wait list of custom orders and requests to teach workshops all over Western North Carolina. Life had been good. Really good. Then came an email from a woman named Eliza. The name didn't ring a bell until I read the second paragraph. I'm reaching out on behalf of Michael Matthews. He's applied for a new adaptive housing grant that requires a statement from a primary caregiver. He listed you as someone who provided care during his early recovery, and he's hoping you might be willing to sign off on the timeline. I laughed. Out loud. A deep, unfiltered laugh that startled Blue off the couch. After everything, he wanted me to validate his version of the past? That I was just a caregiver he once knew? No acknowledgement. No apology. No accountability. Just a request, like I was still in the room down the hall, waiting to be useful. I didn't reply immediately. I sat with it for a few days. Let it marinate. Then I drafted my response. It was short. Professional. Dear Eliza, thank you for reaching out. While I did provide non-compensated caregiving support during Mr. Matthews' initial recovery, our relationship ended several years ago under difficult and deeply personal circumstances. I'm not in a position to verify or support any documentation related to his care at this time. I wish him well in his continued rehabilitation. Sincerely, Mira Talbot. No anger. No insults. Just truth. Written in full clarity by the woman who had once been told she wasn't attractive enough to keep around. I CC'd Monica, my attorney, just in case. And I let that be the end of it. But the universe, it seems, has a thing for timing. A week later, I was invited to speak on a local radio segment about healing through art. A casual, community-based show that highlighted Asheville creatives. The host had seen my booth at the gallery and wanted to hear more about my story. I agreed. The interview was light, a mix of questions about technique, inspiration, and how I started. Eventually, the host asked, gently, was there a moment that pushed you toward creating as a form of healing? I didn't name names. I didn't throw anyone under the bus. But I did say this, I gave years of my life to someone who stopped seeing me as a person. For a while, I forgot who I was. But when I sat down with clay again, just me, the wheel, and silence, I remembered. Art became the way I stitched myself back together. The interview went local viral. Not millions of views, but enough to be shared around our corner of the world. Enough that people who knew Michael would hear it. I got messages from other women. Former clients. A nurse who used to work at Mission who said, we wondered what happened to you. I'm glad you're shining. And then came the kicker. 3 weeks before Christmas, I was prepping for a winter workshop when I saw a man wheeling down the street outside the cafe where my event was set up. It was Michael. He looked older. Not just in his body, but in his spirit. Like bitterness had aged him faster than time. His shoulders slumped. His hair had thinned. There was no spark in his face. He didn't see me at first. I stayed inside, arranging a shelf of finished mugs near the front window, watching quietly. He rolled past slowly, glancing at the shop sign. He paused. I could see it in his eyes, the moment recognition struck. He stared through the glass. I stared back. He didn't come in. Just sat there for a second. A long second. Maybe he thought about it. Maybe he realized how small he looked from where I stood. Maybe he remembered every word he once used to shrink me. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. Eventually, he rolled on. That moment, that silence, was my revenge. Not because he was in a wheelchair. That was never the issue. The accident didn't ruin our marriage. He did. What ruined us was the way he used his pain as a weapon. The way he made me his scapegoat. The way he needed to feel powerful, even if it meant making the person who cared for him feel worthless. And now, years later, he had to face the fact that I had rebuilt my life into something he could never be part of again. I didn't need to humiliate him. I didn't need to make a scene. He saw what he lost, and knew it was permanent. A week later, I hosted a holiday gathering at our house, Paolo, a few close friends, some clients who had become family. We cooked. We drank mulled wine. We exchanged handmade gifts. Someone brought a Polaroid and snapped photos of all of us standing in front of the fireplace. In one of them, Paolo's arms are around me, his head resting on my shoulder while I laugh mid-sentence, wearing an apron smudged with glaze and flour. I looked at that photo the next morning and realized, this is what peace looks like when it finally arrives. Messy. Loud. Full. Honest. Not perfect. Not performative. Real. And the best part? It wasn't something anyone gave me. I built it. From scratch. With my bare hands. After they tried to convince me I had nothing left. They were wrong. They just couldn't see that the woman they thought was broken was just getting ready to create her masterpiece.